In the studio now is our own 4th District Congressman Ron Estes. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's great to be on with you.
I appreciate that. So I understand you just returned from the border. Is it as bad as it appears?
That's right. We had 65 members of Congress down with Speaker Johnson and walking through the process there at Eagle Pass. And Eagle Pass is kind of ground central for what's going on the border. Basically, that's the point where more and more numbers go across. So we hear now on average, we're seeing at that checkpoint at Eagle Pass, 1,400 people a day coming across that border.
Wow.
And when they had their Christmas surge, which the 10 days around Christmas, the cartels were pushing more people across. They were actually doing 2,400 people a day through that process, through that sector, that 240-mile sector, which obviously encompasses a good part of the border, but there's still a whole lot more of the border that other people cross as well. And so it's a strain that's being put on our Customs and Border Patrol folks to be able to process those people. And in the meantime, when they had the big push going on at the end of December, there were no Border Patrol agents out patrolling. They were having to process all these people and work them through and send them elsewhere throughout the country. So we literally do not know who else came across the border during that time because there were no Border Patrol agents out there.
And that's what's very scary. Yeah. So I understand you witnessed some people actually crossing the border in front of you?
It really did. It's a disgusting thing to see. But as we were standing there, members of Congress and the Capitol Police and the law enforcement there, people just calmly walked across the river. They climbed up the bank, and then the process is that they're just put into a van, carried off to a facility, which we saw, a very nicely set up facility, and they're processed. Basically, they try to get identification for them. They try to find out where they came from, get information around that, and then they feed them and clothe them, and they can keep them in the facility and try to research whether there's if they're gang members or criminals, what's the status of them, and then they just release them into the country. I mean, that's the disgusting part about what the president and his
So how do you
administration-
even know who someone is? I mean, they're not carrying credentials, I assume, across the border.
Actually, surprisingly enough, some of them are. I mean, it's gotten so bad the way the cartels control the border over there. They actually go out and advertise to countries around the world, and basically, it's a heyday for them. I mean, they literally the numbers that we were told on average there in Eagle Pass, in that Del Rio sector, the cartels make $42 million a week from the fees that they charge people coming across the border. And if they don't pay, then they make them be servants or slaves once they get to the country. So literally in that one sector over the course of a year, it's over $1 billion that cartel that controls that sector. And the cartels are split up, and they control different sectors through that process, and so that's a sad part that we see what happens. Our laws, we're a country of immigrants, and we should never stop that. We have more legal immigrants that come into the United States than any other country in the world, but this illegal immigrants that cross because they want to come in, and we have people coming from over 170 different countries now. So the cartels bring them in. I mean, Eastern Europe, Africa, Asia, not just Central America and South America and Mexico that come across the borders. And so what the cartels, one of the things they'll do is they'll have them fly to Mexico. So obviously they buy a ticket, fly to Mexico like they're on vacation, and then cross the border.
So we know things are coming across the border. We've seen, I understand, some weapons or bomb-making materials have come across. We know drugs. We know the fentanyl. Do you believe that cartels are making more on the illegals crossing the border or drugs that are coming across the border? Do you have any ideas to that?
It's kind of tough to tell because we don't know the total expanse of how much fentanyl and other drugs are getting across the border or the expanse of the gang members and or terrorists that are coming across. We know they're getting through. Because we're catching some, but we know there's others that are getting through. We know that we've seen in the last 3 years, the number of fentanyl deaths has skyrocketed in the United States. I mean, literally, the number is about 290 people a day in the United States die from fentanyl overdose. And if you think about that, that's the equivalent of a commercial airplane. And so if a commercial airplane crashed every day and killed 290 people, the president would do something about it. But he's hiding this under the rug and not addressing it, is not forcing his Homeland Security administrator to address this.
Do you believe, even during the peak of COVID, do you believe we were losing more people to COVID than what we have these fentanyl deaths?
Well, if you look at fentanyl's now gotten so pervasive, and it's not just somebody who thinks they're taking fentanyl, but other drugs are being laced with it, whether it's you're taking cocaine, actually, whether you're just having it around your house, people that do have it around their house and their kids get a hold of it, or neighbors, or somebody that they invite over, family members. And it's a sad case to see that.
Wow. Well, kind of switching gears here, Congress faces 2 shutdown deadlines with no action yet on spending. January 19th deadline for 4 spending bills and February 2nd deadline for the other 8 appropriation measures. What are your thoughts here?
So one of the things, 2023 was a pivotal year. I mean, it was a turning point year because we borrowed more money during 2023 than we spent on on discretionary programs, which is the first time ever that's happened. And so we've got to do things differently. And that's why we have 2 different funding dates. Instead of typically the approach has been right before Christmas, have funding stop for all 12 government programs and risk a shutdown. Now we broke it up and having analysis of 4 different agencies first, and then the other 8. I've actually gotten an update from the speaker today, as a matter of fact, that they've actually agreed to a top line number on the spending bill.
Okay.
Which is good because it's the top line number that was agreed to on the debt limit bill passed back in May. So it's not higher than that. That's one thing that's an improvement over the normal process.
Absolutely.
Normally the process has been, if you can't come to an agreement, then just throw more money at the problem, and magically everybody will agree. Enough people will agree to it to get it to pass.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is Jeff Blubaugh, and we're with Congressman Ron Estes this morning, filling in for John Whitmer on the John Whitmer Show. The new year's only a few days old, and already we've broken a record. Our national debt has surpassed $34 trillion. And in just the week since Christmas, we've accumulated nearly $100 billion in new debt. Is there any hope of cutting the spending in D.C.?
So that's really an important part. And, I mentioned earlier about 2023 being a pivotal year in terms of the amount of debt that we incurred. Right now, every American citizen owes $100,000 in debt. Everyone. And that's – and if you look at it from a standpoint of a taxpayer or a tax return, which may include a family, may include a couple, that's over $250,000 for tax returns that are owed in debt. So one of the things that's great about us actually focusing on doing different process for the appropriations process is that we can actually start to bend some of this spending curve down. We've got to do that. I mean, it'd be irresponsible to continue down the path that's been going on for decades now, but we've got to stop this and we've got to turn it around. Otherwise, our kids and grandkids are going to have this massive debt and they won't enjoy the freedoms of America.
I remember in the mid to late 80s, and I was in high school, and I think the number was $7,000 or $8,000. Now $100,000 per person for national debt. I mean, just reining it in is good. I certainly appreciate everything you're doing for us, Congressman. Thank you for joining us this evening. And if folks want to reach out to you, they can contact or they can find you at Twitter at Rep. Ron Estes and online at estes.house.gov. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Those are our official sites, and you can actually sign up for a weekly newsletter and get that through our official site. It's one of those that we can't sell your email address, so we wouldn't want to do that anyway. But it's a good way to get facts out. That's a big piece about what we want to do is get the truth out of what's going on.
We appreciate everything you're doing, Congressman. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.